Good morning, good day, good evening, depending what time you found this video. Today I'm with a senior citizen. We're going to discuss about culture in Africa. Please introduce yourself.
Well, it's great to be back. My name is Collins Gabriel Chipari, aka Comrade CGC Mtumawashe. I am the founder and president of Afrilisa, Africa Liberation Supporters Association. We are, in simpler terms, a continental economic pressure group that advocates for the rights and the frustrations really are. Largely, frustrations, a lot of things are going the other way, not as expected by the majority of our citizenry in the African continent.
Okay, so how would you define culture?
Well, culture is a learned way of life. What makes a culture is what people are exposed to in their time. It sort of cleans them, makes them think better for survival, because it's all about survival. And where you come from, what you have experienced, the frustrations you have met, and what you aspire to be, your dreams, your vision as a people and as a nation. That embodies what makes people cultured.
Can you just give us an example of something that is tangible, something that you can just say this can show that we are cultural as Zimbabweans?
Well, Zimbabweans, generally, we have been colonized, and that exposure to the British way of doing things is largely impacted on how we interpret life, and compared to where we come from, because we were not illiterate people then in terms of writing and reading and recording on our history. It was largely oral, passed from generation to generation through folk tales and the like. Others were resorting to things like clairvoyancy and a way of having to be spiritually inclined, and belief and trust in those that say that they can foresee or foretell the future.
Okay, so speaking of culture, when Father Darcy Vera came to sign treaties with Africans, then he was probably wearing a suit just like you. One would argue that we as Africans have failed to identify its cultural origins and maintain it so as to pass it down to our children. What do you have to say about that? You're wearing a suit right now. We all know that a suit is of British origin. So would you say that as Zimbabweans, or in fact as yourself, would you say that you're cultural when you're wearing foreign clothes?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. I would say that I'm a Zimbabwean culture product. No, I've been exposed to various bastardized versions of culture. The African, the Portuguese, the Arabic, a bit of Judaism, culture. And we sort of call myself, a sort of a mixture of, the African, a bit of that, a bit of that, a bit of that. And That makes us a little bit more acceptable to English-speaking people in the Portuguese. Because we have our neighbors in Mozambique, the Portuguese-speaking colony, Angola, and so forth. Zambia and us and the Malawians were colonized by the British, and we have this inclination to want to be more British than the British.
Okay. So, what do you understand by the term cultural imperialism?
Yeah, well, it was forced down the throat to the African. That's cultural imperialism, in that you were told that whatever you were, it was all in the dark ages, and you needed to be enlightened. And the only person who was carrying the torch then was the white man. And the SLA was of Portuguese, British stock, or Afrikaner stock, and a bit of German stock there, Namibia, and so it was a little bit really hodgepodge of of the cultures trying to come out with one thing.
Okay. So, how best as Africans can we preserve our cultural heritage and to even identify it?
Yeah, it's a tall order, in that whatever we believe we did was not recorded. And going by the architecture of Great Zimbabwe, if you compare it to up north, you find that they have structures similar to Zimbabwe ruins, though the designs differ here and there, depending if you inherited from your uncle or from your father. You have your own mind, so whatever you are going to erect, you will modify it. So that is what we inherited, and we think that we are on the right path, yes, but we need to research more on how we got to where we are, because a lot of people we take it hook, line and sinker, as said by the colonizer, without having to look the motive and the agenda. Why is he being good to me? Is there a catch? And eventually there was a catch, because slavery was then introduced. A lot of people were traumatized up till to date. The African underwent a lot of suffering, hard to believe, but they went through that. And we still, don't have that confidence in ourselves. Yeah, we would rather listen to the former colonizer than to your own people.
So, would you encourage that we focus on producing media, let's say magazines, movies, newspapers, that cater for the identification and the passing on of our cultural heritage as Zimbabweans, before we even talk about Africa?
Oh yes, I encourage that, and if I had the capital,
yes,
I'll probably invest in that line of thrust, where you invest in the media, enlighten the young generation, because they are our future. Without them, we are just like singing, or in a vacuum, in a big house, and you just sing to yourself. The echo comes back to you. So we need to invest in our youth and education, intellectual growth. That is what will uplift the African from this status.
Okay, when we're talking about education, are we talking about the international education that we received, or we're talking about our indigenous education as Africans? And do you think it will take us further as Africans to employ our own education, or we should just use the education that we were given by the white settlers?
It's a give and take. You delve into your past, the little you can glean from your elders, and what the colonized brought on board. But you also need to travel. You need to travel and expand your horizon. The more you mix with the various groups of people, cultures, ethnic groups, and so forth, it broadens your horizon. The way you interpret life, the taboos become a little bit less, and the superstitions. You become more, acceptable, and you also accept other people's way of thinking and interpretation of life.
Okay, so as an African youth, how can we benefit from our cultural heritage?
Well, exposure. We need to visit our own, first and foremost, our own country.
Yes.
We have domestic tourism. You visit all the great Zimbabwe's, or the Dojo, the Kami ruins, the Matopos, the Inyanga, the Mtokos. There is always something that is very unique in any given district or province. So if we visit our own historic sites and create more space at an affordable price.
Okay.
Yes.
So, last word of advice for the youth who want to contribute to the preservation of African culture and for its betterment. How can we contribute, and how can we contribute by preserving it and for the betterment of it?
The youth must first and foremost have self-love, self-respect as a people, and say, look, I'm African, I'm a Zimbabwean, without any ism, like Shona, Debele, Karanga, Zulu, Tokoism, Manika, and so forth. No. So I'm a Zimbabwean. I love my country, I love my people, and listen, whether you're in the combis, wherever you are, try and learn as much as you can through interaction with them. Don't be a passive, be a passenger wherever you are. Talk to your people. There is always something you can learn from somebody. And then you also with time expose your knowledge to them and say, yes, maybe we are at this stage as a indigenous black people, but I have traveled in the Americas, in Europe, in North Africa, East Africa, and I think if we were to adopt that type of looking at things and doing things, it will uplift our standard of living.
I thank you, Sir, for your words of advice and your enlightenment.
Thank you, Mr. Golden Joy Pictures. Hope to get another opportunity to be interviewed by you. Thank you so much, and stay blessed.